Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and I want to talk about pornography. I've talked about this several times in other videos, but I want to rehash it just a little bit because there's a point I have not covered. There's some confusion, it turns out, that people kind of lump everything sensual or erotic into the same category. Whether it's commercial, whether it's tasteful, makes no difference. They see all, photographic or video footage of, naked people as being pornographic, and it's all the exact same stuff to them. I want to help disambiguate this idea a little bit with emphasis on the commercial part, because you'll find that there's some really nasty stuff out there. God bless you if you haven't seen it. I never go searching for this stuff, nor have I ever personally paid for pornography in my entire life. But there is some really terrible stuff, and it turns out all this bad pornography, I'm talking about, bondage and sadomasochism, and, if you're into that, God, whatever you want to do, I'm not trying to judge you, but I'm saying if it's being filmed for the purpose of making a product to sell, and people are being recruited into that, it's a very toxic environment, and the product itself is toxic. It actually promotes toxicity and very nasty psychological problems for a lot of people. Anyhow, what I'm saying is the connection between the worst types of pornography and commercialization of it is a very strong connection. You're going to find the worst stuff is for sale, typically. Otherwise, it's just for shock value. Sometimes there's, stuff that goes around the internet as a, shock value kind of joke thing, and that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. And I wouldn't even call that pornography necessarily. That's something else. That's, shock value footage, but you know what I mean. Anyhow, I do believe that there's a time and a place for, erotica, I guess is what it's called, whether it's literature, whether it's, drawings or artwork, whether it's, a photograph tastefully done for somebody specific. And now here's where it gets relevant. This is the relevant point. Somebody specific. There's another connection. I mentioned commercialization, and it turns out there's an even deeper connection between toxic erotic content and the connection between toxic erotic content and the cause of it, which isn't just commercialization. There's something even deeper than that. It is the randomization of the audience. This is where it becomes inappropriate. This is specifically where it becomes inappropriate, because erotica or erotic content is reflective of human reproduction. We can agree on that much. It has to do with sex. Okay, so at some point, it's not pornography if it doesn't boil down to some kind of sexual display or content. And sex in mammals, and pretty much every animal that I know of, has to be non-random for it to be proper. Okay, this isn't. It's not a rule that I'm coming up with. A species will literally die off. It will go extinct with random mating, because it eliminates the natural selection aspect of carrying forward healthy, robust genes. It's a core principle of evolution, and it's also absolutely vital for the survival of any species, including and especially human beings. So, with that in mind, if you took biology, I did in college, and I remember it. I remember non-random mating being super important. When you commercialize sex, and this is also, as an aside, the same reason why prostitution is illegal and obviously inappropriate. If you are confused about why prostitution is illegal, it's because it randomizes sex. It randomizes mating. Anybody who shows up with a fistful of bills gets access, right? And sometimes things go sideways, and it subverts the will of the female. It creates this seedy, disgusting, randomized atmosphere where anything goes if you have the money, right? So you get some really nasty people who shouldn't be having sex with anybody who suddenly are able to. That's the problem with pornography. And if you think about most forms of, the problem with prostitution, if you think about most forms of pornography, it's no different than prostitution, just there happens to be a camera involved. Okay, so if prostitution is inappropriate, and if pornography, in many cases, is the same thing as prostitution, you just happen to have a camera, it should, follow that the same reasons why prostitution is unsavory and unsupportable are applicable to pornography. And it's true. It's very true. And it comes down to, like I said, commercialization makes it inappropriate because it randomizes access. And you can take all the time in the world you want to think about that. I'm 100% sure about it. Random sex is bad. It's going to always be bad. However, to disambiguate, like I said, the original point of this video is to disambiguate between potentially healthy, positive displays of artistic beauty versus the seediest, nastiest pornography that is for sale. Okay, they're two different things, and I think a lot of people fail to understand this. There's a point in a lot of people's lives, I'm speaking mainly about women here, where they begin to mature sexually. They develop into, questioning, interested people who are looking potentially for, human reproduction at some point, if you want to boil it down and say it that way, and they start becoming exhibitionists. Okay, this is a human behavior. It's well known, well documented. During puberty, a little bit after puberty, females especially start flashing. They start becoming exhibitionists just a little bit, and this is natural. It's perfectly natural. And with the advent of technology, with the advent of cameras and video technology, obviously there's going to be a supply of pornographic material. At which point, the question must be asked and answered: should it be made into a product? Does supply rise to meet demand? Okay, well, this is a segue to the failure of our economic system, where supply does in fact rise to meet demand and everything's for sale. And here's part of your major problem with society right now. You have a lot of broken people because everything's for sale, including young women, including pornography, at which point it becomes unsupportable, unsavory, and highly toxic. I just want to say one last time, the final point in summary is that a photograph that represents beauty, a photograph that is made for the express purpose of conveying a sincere impulse that is specific to somebody whose attention is a compliment. I'll say that again. Specific for somebody whose attention is a compliment is not the same as some random Playboy product that you pay-per-view up on your TV. Okay, it's a different thing. So if somebody is, just doing the best they can, not trying to buy pornography, not trying to, dive in and really, swim in the filth, maybe understand that there's also a hormonal aspect for men. There's a huge hormonal aspect where if you do not service your plumbing, so to speak, if you know what I mean, you wind up with a testosterone deficiency, and this is also medically documented. You can look this up. Don't take my word for it. You lose body hair, you lose muscle mass, your voice goes up in octaves. I'm not even kidding. Basically, men become women, and this is perhaps reflective of our current society, because we have a lot of people who are confused and a lot of people who are against men being men, because men have been demonized, and for a lot of good reasons. I'm not trying to say every man's an angel. No, they're not. But to say that the male archetype, the male, the unchained male is bad, including his, his hormonal balance in nature, if he were to indulge it, is always bad. It's always going to be bad. Okay, that's not true. It's not true. Men deserve to be healthy. Men deserve to be themselves. Men deserve to feel comfortable in their own skin, to, if they like, have facial hair, to have a deep voice and an Adam's apple, to have, body hair if they are prone to it, whatever. But our society is currently demonizing the masculine image, including and especially everything connected with sex. And my point here, the relevancy of these comments is, for a man to have a natural hormone balance, he's got to service his plumbing. And I don't, it's awkward. Nobody wants to talk about it. So this is where the market opens up, right? In this economy, this is where the market opens up. People get twisted, people get paid, it gets randomized. That's your problem. Okay, it's not that there's sensual content. It's not that there's beautiful women who are exposing themselves, because they're going to do that regardless. Trust me, they do. I'm saying that it needs to be understood, and it needs to be controlled, I guess. Subsidized, not in terms of business, but subsidized in terms of giving young ladies another option, rather than having to take their clothes off just to make ends meet. Because in this part of the world, everybody has to coin up. You're either independently wealthy, retired, a minor, or disabled, or you're working somehow. And for women, most women, many women, in this day and age, that looks like taking their clothes off, unfortunately. It's a powerful incentive for them because that money's just hanging out. It's just they're getting recruited as they turn of age. If you think I'm exaggerating, you don't know anything about what's going on. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And I'm in favor of getting rid of the nasty pornography, the bad stuff, the commercial stuff. But I understand also the difference between tasteful art and making it possible for men to be men, because they need to. They absolutely need to. Maybe that makes sense. I'm over 10 minutes already. Reach out if you like with questions or comments down below, and look forward to you in the next video. Thank you.